My name is Mark, and yes, cancer sucks. Life doesn't have to. This is my story. Even now, I'm still going back and forth between what the toughest part about having Hodgkin's lymphoma was, and I think I've got it down to two. The first being probably the one you would think of most prominently, and that's losing my hair. One of the weakest moments I've ever had in my life was when not only it's starting to fall out, but when I woke up on a Sunday morning, we'd already buzzed my head down to a buzz cut when we started seeing it on the pillow every morning. But one day I got in the shower and was rubbing some shampoo through my hair, and what I was left with was a handful on each hand, just nothing but hair. And obviously it was from the chemo I was undergoing, but the emotional toll it took on me in the moment, I couldn't even stand anymore. To have that happen to you at 16, you don't want to be bald when you're that young. This is another one of those times where unless you've had it happen to you, it's indescribable, because before there wasn't like a physical sign of me having cancer. Like there isn't a physical sign on me right now if I told you I still have cancer. But losing my hair was. You know, my dad told me to wear it like a badge of honor, a badge of courage. The only thing I could think to myself was, how can anybody look at me normally if I don't even have hair now? You know, one thing I mentioned in the last video, the last chapter, was in those first few weeks and months, how differently people look at you and people treat you, because you know, before my hair fell out, it at least felt like I could get back to normal. But as soon as it was gone, then it was real. Which brings me to the second thing I think was the toughest part of it. Which honestly, you know what, this is it. This was the toughest part about going through Hodgkin's lymphoma. Honestly, it was my friends. I went through 4 cycles of chemotherapy and 15 days of radiation. The only person from my high school, the only person near my age to come visit me in the hospital was my brother. And I know you're sitting there saying, well, yeah, of course your brother would show up. That's out of obligation. That's because he's family. That wasn't the case. And I know that. And I know my brother enough to know that. I don't blame the friends I had at that time for not coming to see me when I was at my lowest moments. Because as much as I was experiencing this new stage of life, I know it couldn't have been easy on them to go and see me at my lowest moments, to see me bald-headed, to see me being pumped with all these medicines to try to get me better by making me sick, you know. I don't blame them for not coming to my hospital room. But man, do I wish they would have shown up. You know, I had a good tight friend group when it all started. And when you get diagnosed with something like that, a few people reach out to you, always checking in on how you're doing, and you may not have talked to them for years or even your whole life, but now they suddenly care about you and your situation. And that's not a bad thing either. But the tough part is when, through your circumstances, your friendships change. Like, for example, if someone were to suddenly ask how you're doing and everything while you're going through cancer treatments and whatnot, and then as soon as it's all over, they could care less. Or, for example, the people you thought were so close to you, all of a sudden you go through this low point in your life and they're nowhere to be seen because they don't want to have anything to do with it. That was the toughest part. That was truly the toughest part. So here's what I have to say to that. And here's what I've learned from it. If you have an opportunity to be there for someone when they're going through probably the lowest point they'll ever have in their lives, be there. Because yes, I understand that you will not be able to understand maybe what they're going through 100%, but presence is perfect for someone going through stuff. Just being there is enough. Whenever you're going through a struggle, whenever you're going through your walk with Christ and you come upon some sin, some obstacle, some disease, something, the worst way to go about it is on your own. If there's anything I've learned from the gospel, it's about 90% of it has been something I've learned from someone else's perspective. I mean, just think about it. How selfish, in a way, is it if you choose to go through your faith on your own when you praise a God who not only created millions and billions of perspectives, but has the ability to use those in your life to see Him better? I mentioned that feeling of isolation, that feeling of being alone, that feeling of no one can understand my situation. It is the worst. Get out of it. And if you're someone that can be there for someone, be that person. I know this is simple advice. I know this isn't revolutionary by any means. And I know I'm not some pastor or anything like that. But honestly, in that moment, that's the only thing you need. It was extremely tough to have my friend's situation change when I went through cancer. And again, I do not blame a single one of my friends for not showing up to the hospital, because they were there for me when I left the hospital. They were there for me in school. They were there for me after school. They may not have been in the hospital, but at the points in my life where I felt the weakest, they at least gave me a shoulder to lean on to keep me on my feet. We were never meant to go through our walk with Christ on our own. There's a reason that it wasn't just Adam, that there was also an Eve. There's a reason that God places people in your life, people who you thought would have zero impact on your story. I was in what's called a huddle for 2 years back in college for a couple of Bible study and ministry leaders that were at the church I was at. And in those 2 years, I learned more about the gospel than I think I ever have in my life. And the reason is because I was in a room with 7 guys who were the most unique and different people to have in a room at the same time. None of us experience Jesus the same way, and yet all of us seem to struggle with very similar problems, but we helped each other through it. That's how I got through cancer. I know it's crazy to think about it, but when I was going through Hodgkin's lymphoma, it did not impact my faith one bit. When I went through treatments, it was enough for me to have friends and family more impacted on their faith than mine. Okay, enough of being Debbie Downer. Let's do a fun story. This is the story of Chinese New Year.